Hey y'all, it's me, Carolyn, and today I'm here with my fiance.
Hi, I'm John.
So John is not only my fiance, he is our resident pharmacology nerd, and we are going to discuss the new antipsychotic medication that just came out, Cobenfy, with a little bit of insight from John.
Me again.
So I know a little bit about antipsychotics because I've been on antipsychotics for like half of my life, and I've been through the lived experience of the side effects. I also just know a little bit about the differences between the first generation and second generation antipsychotics. So for context, there have been like 2 separate generations of antipsychotics, maybe a third, not super sure about that. But the first generation of antipsychotics to come out came out in the 50s, and this was stuff like Thorazine and Haldol. And some of the major complaints as far as side effects go is that they caused like movement disorders, things that affect your motor functioning, like tardive dyskinesia, akathisia, dystonia. And they came out with the second generation in the 1970s, hoping that that would be like an improvement. And while the effects psychologically weren't all that different, the side effects were different, but they were still kind of rough because they caused more like weight gain and a higher risk of diabetes. So every antipsychotic I've been on, it's been a gamble. There's always been side effects. There's always been weight gain. I've had the tardive dyskinesia, I've had the movement disorders, but I wouldn't say there's ever been one medication that was like the best. So I'm a little bit curious about Cobenfy. I'm not sure if it will be like a total game changer or a bust. However, I don't know too much about science, and John does. So, John, what do you know about Cobenfy?
Not a ton about what it's supposed to do, but I have looked into how it acts, how it's believed to act in the brain. First of all, I'm not a doctor. I don't have any kind of degree. I'm just kind of a nerd about this stuff, okay? So don't take anything I say as like treatment advice or as like gospel on how this medication is supposed to work.
Yeah.
In fact, if you look at the literature of any of this kind of medication, they'll tell you right there that they're not sure how it works. It's just believed mechanism of action. So in a lot of medications used to treat different psychiatric disorders or developmental disorders, they tend to target 3 different kinds of neurotransmitters, okay? Serotonin, dopamine, or norepinephrine. And depending on what it is, they tend to prefer one or a combination. Like a lot of antipsychotics will go after dopamine, and some of them will do dopamine and serotonin.
Right.
Most antidepressants go after serotonin mainly. Okay, they try to change the way your body interacts with these things. I don't want to get too scientific, right? But so they target those. And Cobenfy is it's an acetylcholine receptor. It's a muscarinic receptor. Probably not pronouncing that right. Anyways, what it does is it's targeting receptors. It's interacting receptors in a region of the brain that are associated with schizophrenia symptoms, right? And a lot of the other medications target receptors in regions that are affected by, like, that have association with schizophrenia symptoms, but also motor control symptoms, right? This medication doesn't appear, based on what I've looked at and based on what the brand says itself, to interfere with motor control areas, right? So like your tardive dyskinesia and all the other fancy words Carolyn said, it shouldn't affect that stuff. I don't know. Their trials weren't super long. I can't say whether they do or not, but that's promising because I've watched Carolyn try different medications and stop taking some of them because of like the facial tics and stuff like that.
Yeah. He was with me through the tardive dyskinesia, and it was kind of freaky, especially when you don't know what you're going through.
Right. Also a great metal band name.
Tardive dyskinesia!
Yeah. I do have some notes here, bear with me. I have trouble spitting words out sometimes. In addition to the motor control regions of the brain, it's also believed to not affect parts of the brain that are responsible for hormone control. Hormone control problems tend to be associated with things like weight gain on antipsychotics, right?
Yeah, or in my case, lactation.
Sure.
I had like super high prolactin levels.
Yeah, well, that also tends to be associated with weight gain in some people. So according to the literature about the medication and what the company who makes it says, again, company who makes it, right? So you always want to be careful with that. It might not affect people by causing weight gain as much because it's not supposed to interact with that part of the brain. It might not affect motor control, right? I don't know for sure, right? They're not even certain how the medication works, but that would definitely be a breakthrough, and that would be positive in this type of medication, because the reason a lot of people who even are cognizant that they have a problem don't want to go on medication because of the tics or because of the weight gain.
Right.
You know, there are people I have met, I worked in a treatment center for a while, and there were people I met who didn't want to take the medication because they were experiencing certain symptoms. They thought like someone was trying to drug them, or they just didn't believe they had a problem and thought if they knew their triggers they could avoid it. And then there are people who didn't want to take the medication because they enjoyed the way they felt without it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there were people who knew they had a problem, knew they needed help, and didn't want to take the medication because they were worried about weight gain or the tics or stuff like that.
Yeah.
So if this is indeed a medication that doesn't cause or causes less significant issues with motor control or weight gain, that would be big, right? Because you get more people who didn't take it for those reasons sort of on board with that. The other thing that they're claiming, and based on their data, it looks like there's some promise there, is that because a lot of antipsychotics, they target receptors that interact with dopamine, a lot of people tend to have negative symptoms, right? You'll run into them, and like if you're not familiar, like the ability to feel joy, detect pleasure, or even kind of have a personality at all, some of those are negative symptoms, the lack of those. So like when I met Carolyn, they were on a completely different medication, and within talking to Carolyn for 2 minutes, I was pretty confident she had schizoaffective disorder, and I even asked because there was that complete lack of personality and really flat speech, and there were no ups or downs in any of it. Those are a lot of negative symptoms, right? And this medication the data looks like there are fewer negative symptoms in people on the medication versus placebo. I didn't find any data on people taking Cobenfy with negative symptoms versus people taking other medications. But because it doesn't appear to interact with the receptors that cause those negative symptoms, it looks like it might be promising there too. Again, I'm just reading data, right? I'm not making any guarantees. I don't think anyone should get like super out of their skin excited for this just yet, because we just don't know.
It's pretty early on. It was just approved by the FDA in September, so I'm really not sure that there's a lot of experience out there yet from people who can say just how effective it is. But I mean, I think it's promising. I hope that it works well.
Well, there's reason to have hope for it. Mm-hmm. I tend not to get too excited about things until I see them, and I have seen a lot of videos with people who are just jumping up and down excited, and there certainly is. I mean, it would be great, right? And it should, based on the statistics I'm looking at and the research they have, it should be better than those other medications. Like, it's likely people won't experience as many negative symptoms. It's likely people won't have the facial tics, right, or the hormone issues, but you just don't fully know because they only compare it to placebo. They don't do medication versus medication. And I haven't looked at, if I wanted to, I could have taken a look at the data from other medications and seen if they even addressed the negative symptoms in their look, you know, the PANNS scale or PANSS, whichever one it is, positive, negative, and general psychopathy symptoms that they tend to use that scale to measure that stuff. I'd be interested to look at that, but I haven't. But it does look like, at least versus people who weren't taking anything with the condition, the people taking the medication experienced fewer negative symptoms. Now, the difference in people taking the medication versus placebo on positive symptoms was far greater, right? So they experienced far fewer positive symptoms, right? There's more promise for it there than there was for the negative symptoms, but there should still be a reduction in that, which would be great.
The only thing that concerned me, I guess, was that when I looked at, like when I was looking into it, and I don't know if this is like corrected or anything because there's two different medications that like interact with each other for this to work, but I saw that the side effects they do have are a lot of like gastrointestinal things and like urinary retention, which I feel for anyone who already has any gastrointestinal conditions like IBS or anything, that might not be the best medication for them.
Well, it's a matter of pros versus cons.
Right.
Right? Do the pros outweigh the cons? Excuse me, gross. As with any medication, like there's some of that. So there's two medications in this drug. One of them interacts with the receptors I was just talking about, that's xanomeline. The other one is called trospium chloride. It's literally only there to mitigate peripheral symptoms because some of the receptors that the xanomeline acts on can cause some nasty symptoms. So the primary side effects that the trospium chloride is there to mitigate are nausea and vomiting.
Oh, okay.
Which my guess is, my guess is that these side effects are gnarly enough that they decided to put that medication in there, and if the nausea and vomiting was that bad, it was probably going to be a deterrent to getting people to continue to take the medication.
Yeah.
Trospium chloride is a medication used to treat incontinence.
Oh, okay.
And things like that. That's what it was created for. So the reason there's urinary retention and GI issues is it relaxes the muscles in those areas.
Okay.
Right? And that's part of how it works to prevent peripheral side effects.
That makes sense.
I don't know how severe that is. I don't know. It's probably dose dependent, maybe. Right? Not maybe, but it's probably dose dependent. And I don't know how much of that medication they had to put in there to mitigate those side effects. So again, it's going to be like, you know, hey, maybe you have trouble going, but you're not experiencing negative side effects, or hey, I'm having too many issues with this, I need another medication. So it might not be right for everybody. And there are a few other people making videos about this that have a lot more technical jargon and a lot more information about it. Like I said, there's reason to be sort of cautiously optimistic about this. Just me, and I'm not countering or butting heads against anything anyone else has said. It's just my personality. I'm the kind of person who's like a wait and see kind of guy.
Very true.
Like in your case, I don't think this medication is necessary. You have versus the medication you were on when I met you, you have a personality.
Right.
You seem to get excited and experience joy. The person you are right now, I don't think talking to you for 5 minutes would be enough to identify that you had schizoaffective disorder.
Yeah, if it had been the medication, I have been on some really, like, they were great medications, but they had awful side effects. Like, they helped, I got better, but my body didn't, and it ultimately, it wasn't worth being on those medications, and I kept having to switch, and every time I would switch, it would be the same old game of, you know, more side effects, just as bad, but different. It took me like over 10 years to find medications that don't give me bad side effects. Like, there are little side effects, but like they're really not, like they're not deal breakers like before. And this one sounds like if I had been in the situation I was in before, like when I gained 70 pounds overnight, you know, I would want to take something like this. But I'm stable on medication now. I don't really need anything different. Like, I really shouldn't change up my game at this point because I have found like that sweet spot. However, I think especially for like, for instance, if people are like treatment resistant to medication and they try medication after medication, I think it might be worth it to try out this new thing because it does have a different mechanism of action. Another thing is, like I was saying with John earlier, like hypothetically, what would be a reason that I would try something new? And I think that, you know, if you consider the medication clozapine, which tends to be like this end of the road medication for people who are treatment resistant, who don't succeed on antipsychotics, you know, that tends to be like the one to go to because it's so effective. It's just that it is so risky because of the side effects that they don't want to put people on it just willy-nilly.
Right.
If this were like the clozapine to end clozapine. Like if this was as effective as clozapine for people who were treatment resistant and it didn't have all of these side effects, like that would be really desirable. It's just that we can't know that yet. I just hope that it's something like that. Like I hope that it can be more effective for people who haven't been successful on antipsychotics. I really hope that because it's, it binds to different receptors, that it will maybe be successful in people who, just haven't been able to find the right med.
Right. Well, and I don't know. I think when I first saw that it was 2 medications and one of the medications was in there just to treat side effects, I was a little sketched out by it.
Yeah.
But at the very least that, the trospium chloride is in there to treat some of the side effects, which means you're not taking a medication that you then have to take another medication for.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes.
I always hate seeing people who are taking 9 different things and 3 of them are to counteract the side effect here, and then when you look at it, a lot of them are contraindicated, and it just becomes a mess.
It is a mess.
So at the very least, what they've done is they've found a medication that has some nasty side effects that they can mitigate by putting another drug in there, which is kind of cool. But I mean, it's a good thing. If this, like I said, I'm always a little on all of this stuff, but I mean, if it works the way they believe it does, if it has the efficacy that they say it does, then it would be a breakthrough, right? Because most of these medications target like dopamine, serotonin, or norepinephrine, and I'm not just talking about antipsychotics there. I'm talking about
just
psychiatric medications and like ADHD medication and stuff like that in general. So that would be good news, and hopefully it does help some people.
I hope so.
Hopefully it does.
Yeah.
Because I've seen too many people who are good people, who are charismatic, energetic people who won't take their medication for one or more reasons, and I don't think everybody needs medication, but there are people out there that I believe definitely medication helps, and so the more people a medication can help, the better. And so I don't know that this is some kind of wonder drug, but I do think there is reason for people to be stoked.
Yay, cool.
And that's through my very limited knowledge. Again, I'm not a doctor. I don't have a degree. I'm just a geek.
You are a geek, yeah. And I really appreciate you sharing all of that with us and breaking it down, because that kind of stuff, like, medication, brain science.
M1 receptor, M4 receptor, the D2 receptor, acetylcholine.
All over my head. It's all over my head. So thank you very much, John. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, well then, that's it for this week. If you'd like to support my channel, if you liked this video, please comment or like or subscribe.
Bulls.
Let us know what you thought. What are your thoughts about... Let us know what your thoughts are about Cobenfy. If you're hopeful for it, if you're skeptical, what do you think? And also, if you're interested in watching more of my videos, I put out new videos every Thursday/Friday, so there will be more coming soon. And I'll see you all in the next one.
None of the hate in the comments.
No, thank you. We don't need that.
Kind of ignore it.
Oh, yeah.
Ready?
All right. Bye.
Bye.